Welcome to the second season of the Hope Athletics Orange and Blue podcast. Our first episode, the special guest, the new Hope College men's soccer coach, John Conlon, class of 97 and a decorated student athlete here at Hope, and who's had a wonderful high school career and now is rejoining the Flying Dutchmen. Welcome to the Orange and Blue podcast, John.
Great to be here. Excited to be back at Hope and excited to be back where my coaching days began and where I grew as a young man.
We'll start with, before we get into your story and how you came to Hope and your life as a student athlete at Hope and then your post-Hope career, what does it mean to you to have this opportunity to lead the men's soccer program at Hope, and a program that's very near and dear to your heart?
Well, 93 to 97, I thought were amazing years for Hope soccer. Coach Smith brought in some pretty big time players during that time, and we had a goal of winning a national championship. And we went to the Final Eight in 94. We were ranked in the top 5 in the country in 95 and 96. But more importantly, the second I set foot on Hope's campus in 93, I just felt like there was something different about the school and something different about the soccer program. The school, I said this in my interview last week, like people at the school were really excited to see me. People seemed to love the school. People were very genuine and they weren't selling me anything. They were just happy with where they were. And that made me fall in love with the school. And then the soccer program felt like a family from day one. The seniors welcomed me in. The seniors made me feel like I was a senior, even as a freshman. And so the atmosphere was exactly what I was looking for. And it was the best 4 years of soccer I had in my career for sure.
Where did your love of soccer begin? How did you get into the sport?
Yeah, so my dad, my grandparents are immigrants. My grandfather is off the boat from Ireland, so it was my grandmother, and on the other side, Polish and Irish. And so my grandfather Conlon in New York City tried to get my dad to play soccer, but my dad wanted to play baseball and basketball, just like every New York City kid, right? And dad grew up in Brooklyn, so my dad ends up out here, marries my mom. My dad's an attorney. My mom was a judge. And so at 4 years old, there was this new soccer thing in Kalamazoo, Michigan called AYSO. And then there was also Missile, which was a new program. And my parents had this rambunctious 4-year-old kid who, to be honest with you, I probably never stopped moving my first 4 years, and they're like, okay, we got to get him doing something or he's going to drive us crazy. So they put me into soccer, and my dad always tells a story that like the first game I played, I got the ball and dribbled the length of the field and scored like 10 times. And then the parents were mad because I kept scoring and wasn't passing the ball. And, I don't know if Coach Smith would tell you I got better at passing the ball, but I definitely fell in love with the game right there. I also loved basketball. My dad was extremely passionate about basketball. But I realized that like 13, 14 years old, that even though basketball was one of my loves, that soccer was what I was meant to do. And I was lucky enough to play for Dieter Valk at Portage Northern, German coach, legendary coach at Portage Northern, my freshman and sophomore year. And Dieter basically saw some things in me that really built me up as a person and player. And then Dieter retired, and I went down to Culver Military Academy for my junior and senior year and played for another German coach, Jim Brew, Herr Brew. And he was exactly like Dieter, saw something in me, actually changed the way I played a little bit. And from there, I ended up at Hope, which is a whole nother long story. It's God's plan, if you will, because I had already verbally committed to Bowling Green, and some things happened. So I decommitted, and then Lee Shop is from Carmel, Indiana, and his high school coach knew who I was and recommended that I at least go look at Hope. And came up to Hope and fell in love with it right away. And honestly, like I immediately turned down every other school that was talking to me because I just knew. I mean, I knew when I walked on campus it was the right fit. But the one thing Coach Smith will tell this story. I think he called my school, and at Culver, obviously everything is yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. And so when I got on the phone and was saying yes sir, no sir, I think he was pretty impressed by that. Of course, we said that because we were scared to death to not say it. But when I came to campus, I was a pretty confident young man, and I told Coach Smith, like, listen, if I'm coming here, I'm gonna be an All-American. I'm gonna be the MVP of the league, and we're gonna win a national championship. And that definitely, I think back of that now, and I think, wow, who was this 18-year-old kid back then? But unfortunately, I didn't win the national championship. We got close a couple of times, but that still eats at me today. And whenever I say I'm going to do something, I usually try to fulfill it. So that's where it started. And I've had other huge mentors along the way too that obviously led me to where I am now. But I loved coaching my whole life. My dad was a coach. He pointed out what coaches did. And then the Hope soccer camps is where I really started coaching.
Having the kind of legendary coaches that you did through your high school and I imagine even younger, but obviously the noted names from Portage Northern and Culver, and then coming to Hope. Did you realize at the time that coaching was going to be something you were going to do and observing them, or did that come later for you?
I think back at it now, I don't think I realized then. I knew my dad was doing something with me to create a leader, because when I was like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, we would go to Western Michigan football, basketball games, and he was constantly pointing out like tactical adjustments, how the coaches dealt with their players. He got me around coaches all the time. Like I started going to basketball camps all over the country. I went to, 5-star basketball camp, which at that point was the best basketball camp in the country. Lou Conaseca at St. John's. I went to his basketball camp. I went to Ray Meyer's basketball camp, and it was actually up in Wisconsin, but he was the legendary DePaul coach, Joey Meyer too. So my dad was always talking to me about coaches, how they do things. My dad loves sports, and I don't know if that's just the way he was or is, but he definitely saw something in me that was, I think, molding me to be a coach. And then at 18, I started, I had no money. I'm working soccer camps, and Coach Smith put me in charge of some groups, and I realized, man, this is really fun empowering kids, and it's really fun getting kids to do things that they don't believe they can do. So honestly, at 18, I realized right then that I loved coaching. And then at 19, I coached my first club team, 19 or 20, which Marcus Voss, who's a former Hope All-American, was the goalkeeper on. And it was my first team. And actually, Chad Carlson, who works at Hope, was on that team as well. So, when you have players like Marcus Voss and Chad Carlson, it makes you look good as a coach. Both great athletes and great people. And that was my first team, and I probably did every single thing wrong, but I had energy. And from there, we just kept progressing. I literally have annoyed every coach in the country by calling them and picking their mind and asking them how they do things. And it's created some great friendships and relationships. But, the one thing I said when I interviewed at East Kentwood in 2000 was that the second I think I know it all is when I'm done coaching, and I'm still learning. So I love where I am right now.
What is it about the sport itself that you really enjoy and find? Obviously, you had a lot of options. I know your grandfather's influence certainly was a part of it too, but obviously to stick with it, and you're still competing now on the sideline versus on the field. What is it about the game that really grabs you and you like sharing that passion for soccer with young men and young women as well?
Well, I hope Pete and Mitch and Brian and those guys aren't listening to this, because I have this argument with my friends who are basketball and football coaches all the time that soccer is the most complicated game in the world because it's the only game that's 11v11, free flowing, can't call a timeout. There's no way. I mean, you can make tactical adjustments in the game. You can make some decisions that can influence the game, but ultimately it comes down to players. The substitutions are limited to a degree depending on what level it's at, but it's free flowing. And so it's a game that the best team doesn't always win. And I would say actually a lot of times the more organized team wins, not the best team or the team that makes the most out of their chances wins. But it's a cruel game, and it's this game that you'll never master. I don't care who you are. I mean, if you just even look at how it's evolved since when I played at Hope in the early 90s, the game is so much more complicated. It's faster. Decision making has to be faster. Athletes are better. The space on the field is less. The tactics are much better. The coaching's much better. It's a game that's continually evolving, and obviously all sports do, but soccer is the one game that you ultimately will never master. Well, with the exception of golf, but that's another story. My golf game, at least. But it's a game that constantly challenges you, and you have to have pretty strong resolve if you're going to be a coach of it, because it's going to break your heart.
When at your time at Hope, how did that help you to become a coach and then also a teacher? Been a fifth grade teacher. What did you learn during your time as a student athlete at Hope that prepared you for that part of your professional career?
Yeah, I mean, Coach Smith was great with me. Everyone has different relationships with their coaches, but he saw, I think, right away that maybe the leadership part had already been somewhat developed by my father. And so he empowered me. I still remember this conversation going in my sophomore year. We sat prior to the season, and he was actually asking my opinion on players and tactics and what we should be doing. And it was because he I think saw that maybe I wanted to be a coach or someday was going to be a coach. And so he empowered that. And I learned a ton from that. Like he really trusted me as a leader, trusted me as a player. I'm sure I drove him nuts at times because I was probably way too confident for a 19, 20-year-old kid. But I learned that you have to, in this game especially, really trust your players and trust your leaders. Because if you don't, it's like teaching a 16-year-old how to drive. If you don't trust them and you're grabbing the steering wheel, you're probably going to drive into an embankment. So you just hope that everything that you've taught them and empowered them to do leads you on the straight and narrow. So I did learn a ton during that time. That really grew me. And also at the camps, coach gave me some autonomy. And at first, I was just energetic, didn't know a ton about coaching or teaching. By the way, coaching is teaching. If anyone tells you any different, I think the best coaches I've been around are instructors first and, coaches second. So he really started putting me in charge of big groups, even at like 19 or 20 years old. And I always say this to my players, like you have to fail before you can succeed. And I'm sure I failed a ton. I'm sure I made a ton of mistakes, but that is what grew me. And then also, I'd be remiss to not mention Lee Shop. I mean, I think Lee Shop was probably one of the biggest influences on me, mainly because Lee was every bit the competitor I was, and driven like a crazy man like I was as an athlete. And so I was lucky enough to have Lee as an assistant 3 of the 4 years, and he really helped to mold me as a young coach too. So it all started at Hope without question.
And then your time at Kentwood, you go there as a young coach and get an opportunity to mold a program. And then I'm sure it's maybe even hard for you to summarize kind of the memories that you have. I mean, 5 state championships, and just tremendous with the boys and tremendous success with the girls program as well. And now obviously coaching the girls with, at Byron Center and having success there too, which you'll do this spring. How would you summarize your time at Kentwood and what that has meant with you that you're going to carry forward here at Hope?
Yeah, Kentwood was definitely the next step in my progression. I still think back to Jock Ambrose hiring me, and I was 23 years old, didn't know what was up, what was down. Once again, I came in and told Jock we were going to be the first program to win a state championship from the west side of the state, and the largest. I don't know, I say stupid things apparently, but uh, I also told him we were going to be the best place to play high school soccer in the country. And I don't know, maybe I said those things because it holds myself to a high standard. But I still remember, when I took over at Kentwood, they were at the bottom of the league with, basically had won like 2 or 3 games on the girls' side and the guys' side. My first conditioning session, I told this in my interview, I had convinced my brother to come assist me from Portage Northern. He had been at the Portage Northern teams that were winning state championships or competing for state championships. I convinced him to come coach with me. And the first conditioning session, we had 10 guys and all 10 threw up. And then the next conditioning session, the next day, we had 2 guys. So my brother Luke said to me, hey, I think you're at the wrong school. And I said, no, man, it'll take some time. Just give it some time. We just got to create a culture. And that first year, I learned a lot. I learned that people didn't think we were going to be good. So my first game coaching, I still remember this. A referee said to me, oh, you're the new coach at Kentwood. Well, hey, I'm sorry, you guys will never be good. And then once again, arrogant young John Conlon says, well, you don't know me very well. And it did take a while, but 5 years later, actually, that referee came up to me and said, John, I got to apologize for what I said to you 5 years ago. I know how hard you've worked to kind of build this and get guys to believe. And he's like, I'm amazed at how your teams always create their own luck. And to me, that was like the highest compliment. It's probably one of the greatest compliments anyone's ever given me. And actually, that referee is a friend of mine to this day. But it was not easy. We had to create confidence. We had to get guys to believe. When we started in Kentwood, I was practicing in the outfield of a baseball diamond. I couldn't even get on the game field. I used to sneak out in the middle of the night and water the outfield of the baseball diamond, which drove my HR people nuts in Kentwood. But I had to do some things to get us to where we needed to be. But really, I think ultimately, I hired some good people around me who are extremely intelligent and loyal and care deeply about the kids. And that's what made the difference. And, the one thing I learned at Portage Northern, and this is one of my favorite stories, Dieter Volk came to a club game when I was in 6th grade. And I didn't even know he knew who I was, but we were at this tournament and he had the captains of the Portage Northern varsity team there. And he walked over and said, you're John Conlon, right? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, this is Mike Mason and my son, Mike Volk, and a couple other guys. He said, gentlemen, this is the future of Portage Northern soccer. And what I learned from that was he knew every kid in Portage. Like he knew every kid from kindergarten. I was floored by that, absolutely floored. And at that point, like he didn't have to say another word to me. I would have done anything for that man. So I realized that, I got to get down into the elementaries, figure out who the kids are in Kentwood, get them excited. A little bit of shameless self-promotion. Every single thing we ever did, we handed out East Kentwood soccer shirts. We wanted every single kid in West Michigan wearing East Kentwood soccer. And that was Forest Hills kids. That was Caledonia kids. That was at Granville. That was everywhere. We wanted every person wearing East Kentwood soccer shirts. And we wanted to create this culture where kids wanted to play there. And that kids in kindergarten and 1st grade wanted to grow up and play for East Kentwood. And my staff believed in that too. So, it's like anything, success breeds success. Like we had to break through a glass ceiling to win the state championship. And I'll be honest, coaches, I think sometimes we get a little too much credit. Obviously we have to lead the ship, but players win the games. I was blessed to have Mark and Dominic Baroni. Joe Baroni their dad was an All-American at Calvin, but Mark and Dom really bought into what we were doing. They were great players and they believed. and they led us to our first state championship. And then after that, it was, it was all downhill. Like we really didn't even have to drive the car. We were already, on a roll. So yeah, there's a lot to it. 22 years, a lot of great stories. Kentwood is the most diverse high school in the state. I've got every type of kid. 40% of my team is Muslim. 40%, actually now it's almost 60% speaks a different language at home. We have kids that are from war-torn nations. Obviously Taro Kambloa played at Hope. He's from Liberia. And the stories of the kids I had, they empowered me every day. They made me want to coach. They made me want to make sure they graduated. They made me want to make sure that we were good so that they had something to believe in. And so, yeah, unbelievable 22 years. And it's really hard for me to leave. Don't get me wrong. I love Kentwood. I'm loyal to Kentwood, but it's good to be back home at Hope for sure.
I imagine too, with your success in Kentwood, I know there's been a fair amount of players that have gone on and played collegiately, but you've also had kids that end of the road is high school, and it's a great high school memory. That balance, I'd imagine that's rewarding in itself, because it's not just about getting a kid to the next level. It's having a kid having an enriching, experience, being part of a team and being and improving their own game.
Well, I said this the other day. I don't remember who I said it to, but I think when I was a young coach, like 23 to 27, 28, I didn't quite get it. Like I understood, coaching. I was learning coaching, but I didn't understand like the impact coaches have on players. I just don't think I was thinking like that. And I was so intense. And I was a very competitive player. Coach Smith will probably tell you that I was the most competitive person he's ever been around, with the exception of Lee. I can't stand losing, but I let that kind of dictate how I did things. And in the short term, I think if you're domineering and authoritarian, I think that's successful in the short term, but I think that dies really quickly. And in 2005, we had the best team in the state, and we went into the state tournament, won the district, went into regionals. And this was like the team I thought, this is going to be my first team to win it. And I remember telling the guys, the only way we're losing is if there's no time on the clock, which I think now is still probably the stupidest comment I ever made, because that's exactly how we lost. Andrew Gorehouse played for me then. He graduated from Hope, played at Hope. He was hurt, but he was playing goalkeeper, and he had hurt his leg really bad. But with 10 seconds left in the game, they served the ball into the box, and kid headed it in with no time on the clock, and we lost. And I cried. I cried. And unfortunately, I think I probably cried because we lost, not because that my guys had lost. And that's just being vulnerable right now and being forthright. But I remember my dad coming up to me after the game and talking to me and saying, you know what, this is the best thing that could ever happen to you. He's like, you are an extremely intense, driven individual, but, your players are playing like you are acting, which is, really hot all the time, like running hot all the time. He said, as a player, you were calm, relaxed, never lost your cool. You need to be like that as a coach. And you need to care deeply about your kids and get them to buy in. And if you do that, great things are going to happen. And my dad's a really smart man. He reads people really well, and probably the best advice I ever got as a coach. And from then on, like, I just changed my approach. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still super competitive and push guys. But I studied guys like Tom Izzo. Izzo is a fiery guy, but his guys love him. Krzyzewski is another one that I absolutely learned everything I could about the way he does things. Nick Saban, some of the great coaches. I just studied the way they did things and changed my mentality and changed the way I lived and died with every second of every day. And it's made all the difference. And I'll be honest, my greatest accomplishments are not championships. It's the guys who have graduated, the guys who have gone on and are successful, the guys who are having kids now. And, that's what means the world to me, that the friendships I have with them are everything. Some of my best friends are guys who play with Mark and Dominic Baroni are like sons to me. And that's what it's all about. Soccer's a cruel game. If you're going to get caught up in always winning championships, you're going to have your heart broken a lot.
Now, I imagine you take that same approach here to Hope. What are your, as you start, putting together your plan for this program and putting your stamp on it? What do you want? What do you have for goals for this program? And also not only competitive excellence, but trying to transform lives at the collegiate level too.
Yeah, well, the measurable goal, I mean, it's going to take a while. Listen, whenever new leadership comes in, there's a transition period. Guys have to buy into me. They have to understand my expectations. They have to understand stylistically how we want to play. Like, last year's team. We have a different group of guys now. We're going to have different recruits coming in. It's going to take a little bit. But I've always said judge coaches on their third year. Like if you look at Nick Saban at Alabama, you look at Lou Holtz when he was at Notre Dame, like it's their third year where you can really see how dominant their program becomes. But my goal, forget the measurable stuff like conference championships and national championships. Those are great, but my goal is to produce quality individuals. I mean, the young men coming out of my program, I want them to be great fathers and doctors and teachers and leaders in their own right. Maybe someday one of them will, follow me and take this role away from me. I honestly, I've realized now in my life that empowering young people is probably the greatest thing I can do as a leader and coach, and getting them to have self-confidence, getting them to believe in themselves, getting them to believe they can do things they can't, do without a coach. That's way more important to me than the wins and losses, honestly. And I always know I've done a good job when after the season, the guys come up and give me a hug, or if they come back later and they want to see me, or if they come back years later and want to see our team play. That's how I judge myself. I judge myself based on my relationships with them more than anything else, because, ultimately sometimes you're going to lose in soccer. It's the way it is.
With what kind of, do you have an idea, or is it getting to know the guys, what kind of style of soccer you play? Obviously that it's a complex game with probably a million different strategies for how to stick the goal in net and keep the other one out. What do you envision, or is it a matter of getting to know what you have first and forming that team when you are able to work out?
Well, I think, college is going to be a little different because I can actually recruit guys that kind of fit my personality and my style. High school, you deal with what you have, right? Like you just deal with the kids you have it, and you have all different types. I can tell you that, like, I hear coaches talk about formations all the time, and, formations are only as good as the players in it, and they're only as good as the culture you create. So our culture when we play is we come after people. I mean, I am probably the most aggressive human being in the world when it comes to competitive athletics. I as a person could never sit back. Like if Coach Smith were to say to us, hey, we're going to defend this whole game and stay in a shell, I was probably the one guy that would say, okay, coach, yeah, we're not doing that today. And that probably is what drove him nuts. But we come after people, and it doesn't matter what our talent level is. We're going to press. We're going to come after you in waves. We're going to be resilient. Stylistically, we keep the ball on the ground. We make teams chase. We love to keep the ball. The joke I always have is, if you don't like to defend, then don't give the ball back. And I've had plenty of guys that don't like to defend. I said, okay, well then don't ever give the ball back. If you don't give the ball back, then you never have to defend. But we will definitely come after people. We will not sit back. We will respect everyone and fear no one. And also, I fully believe, and this is something I learned from Bill Belichick, is we're going to believe in the next man up idea. Like guys deep on our bench need to be ready. Like if we get an injury, I fully expect the next guy to step in and be impactful. So that doesn't quite answer it because I have to see our personnel, but the guys will learn really quickly that I'm not somebody who is passive.
And lastly, I'd be remiss. It was a joy to meet your family, your wife, Kelly, and your three children when we took your guys' picture, for the announcement. Just talk about them and kind of what your family means to you, and how I know from talking to coaches that if they didn't have a supportive family, they wouldn't be able to do what they do in all the odd hours and busy seasons. So just talk about your family and kind of, how central they are in your life.
Yeah, well, just to show you how important soccer has been in my life, I think every close friend I have somehow indirectly is related to soccer, and my wife as well. She actually was a 4-year starter at Western Michigan, was their all-time leader in starts at one point, and I met her because she was coaching my sister at Portage Northern, small world. And she was very supportive and is very supportive of, my coaching progression. I think at times it makes marriage and relationships difficult when you're married to a coach because of our commitment level, right? But the fact that, and she was a highly accomplished athlete and played for probably, the winningest coach in the history of Michigan, which is Tim Storch. So she knew the demands of the game and the demands of coaching. And so she's been amazing that way. Just supporting every single aspect of what I do. And she's a great coach in her own right. She actually built the Byron Center program up. And then all I did was kind of step in and make sure I didn't screw it up. So yeah, it's been a great relationship and partnership in terms of that as well. My kids, they are very unique in their own ways. I think my son Brody is probably most like his mom. I got to coach him this year on my varsity team, and he had a great year as a freshman. He's extreme, like his mom. He's very, very driven, pretty quiet for the most part, but fearless, and I think has a pretty good future ahead of him as a player. My son Caleb, the second one, is all Conlon. He will tell you how good he is at everything. So much like my brothers, it drives me nuts. He actually thinks that I never played the game and I'm just some old dude. And he gives me a hard time all the time and everything. And I just laugh because I look at him, I'm thinking, man, he is definitely my bloodline without question. My brothers are 100% like that. And my dad, being a New Yorker, is like that. And then my daughter is, the absolutely best human being I think I've ever been around. Sweet, loving, caring, very good athlete in her own right, but also has the biggest heart of any human being I've been around. So, it's listen, coaching puts a stress on relationships and families. And I think every coach would tell you that. But it's my profession. It's what I've chosen. It's what I love. And I love that my family supports me in it. And I love that they're all a part of it too. That once again, it'd be really hollow if they weren't a part of it. And I hope that answers that. I'm sure that one of them will be upset I didn't talk more about them. That's the way they are. But probably Caleb. He probably wants me to tell everyone that he's the best player in the country. But
yeah, well, that's out there, so that's good. We'll know.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Let him prove it. Well, hey, it's been great to spend some time with you, and I know a busy time ahead. I know coaching Byron Center and then getting to know your guys and working out with them and preparing the fall. And we're looking forward to an exciting fall at Van Andel Soccer Stadium.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So Jerry Yeagley is the winningest coach of all time in Division I. He coached at Indiana. And when I was a young coach, I got to spend a lot of time around Jerry, and I got a lot of stories about him. But what I noticed right away when I was around the Indiana guys is that if you played at Indiana, whether you were 70 or just graduated or currently there was like this brotherhood and this family, and like, everyone was connected. If you see them at the national convention, like, the Indiana guys, because they're all together. And Hope has that same type of brotherhood on the guys soccer side. And I think, the alumni maybe haven't been as involved recently, and they will be brought back. They trust me when I say that all the guys that I played with and came after me are very passionate about Hope College, and the guys before me as well, and passionate about Hope soccer. And we're going to embrace that. And I'm going to get the guys in our program to understand how important that is, because when you leave here, I want you to feel like you can come back in 25 years and still take pride in our program and pride in our school. And so I look forward to that piece, bringing the alumni back and really having crazy atmosphere, especially when we play Calvin.
Certainly, there is, as you know, I'm sure you visited. And in my experience, there is nothing like a full house at Van Andel Soccer Stadium. Those Hope Calvin matches and some of the other matches we've had, the facility and just the atmosphere is just it's an amazing place, and we're looking forward to having those kind of games again, and should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we want to even take it to another level. We want it to be like Cameron Indoor at Duke, where people just do not want to play at our stadium because of how loud and crazy the fans are and supportive they are. That's the goal ultimately.
Make it a lot of fun. We look forward to the fall, and good luck for the next few months. And we'll see you on the sideline soon. And thank you for listening to this episode of the Orange and Blue podcast, celebrating everything that Hope Athletics, as John can attest to. There's some amazing people and amazing place here, and we look forward to spotlighting it as often as we can.